Good afternoon, everybody. I am Sherry. I am the political campaign coordinator for Honest Elections, and I want to bring up some Honest Elections petition updates for you. Today, we have the awesome Moses Ross, and he is very, very steeped in campaign finance reform. So, no further ado. Hey, Moses, thank
Hey,
you for
oh, of
joining me.
course. My
Please give
pleasure.
us a little background about who you are and uh, what your vision is on campaign finance reform and why people should sign on our petition.
Well, oh, gosh, I'll say this: we have a real opportunity here uh, to uh, take back our elections from special interests and from big money. I think that it's pretty obvious in the state of Oregon. It's been a real passion of mine to try to work with these good governance groups for many years to uh, help establish regulations around how campaigns are run and how they're financed. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to work with some great people to very knowledgeable in the field that share that same passion. Um, and the folks at Honest Elections are that group. I've been able to work with
Right.
folks at Honest Election Oregon with this. And very quick background, back in this ball really started back in 1996 with Dan Meek when he had his measure up there and the changes to the Constitution to try to establish these basic reforms. And they actually conducted an election in 96 with those reforms. And but then in that one election, by the way, the cost of the election for state house or for state senate house seats was low and affordable. But there's certainly evidence data that shows that now in the state of Oregon, what once was a race that would cost $50,000, $100,000 maybe to be able to get through a campaign and get your word out, your information out, now is going into the $600,000, $1 million costs. Statewide elections are just obscenely expensive. And you see these special interests coming in and spending large amounts of money for their preferred candidates. You can go back to and both sides are guilty of this too, Sherry. I mean, I'm a Democrat. I'm a strong Democrat, but everybody here has adapted to these loose laws in the state of Oregon when it comes to campaigning and campaign finance. And, so the status quo is in their advantage, it's in their court, if you will. It allows them to have that influence that they have, the Phil Knights of the world, and there's certainly, once again, both sides are guilty of this. There's lots of examples of the Phil Knights spending money on the Republicans, millions of dollars on Republican candidates. There's lots of examples of Democratic candidates receiving $1 million checks as well. So, both hands are not clean in that sense, but they are playing by the current rules. So what we're trying to do here is establish some basic fundamental guidelines that will level the playing field and allow and incentivize voters, candidates for office to be able to not have to focus on special interests and their concerns and their wants and needs because of the influence of that big check coming in, and actually have to listen to the voter and be more respectful of the fact of what the voter wants. And so back in 2015, going back to that, in 1996, okay, so that passed, it didn't go through. There was a challenge in the courts. We don't have it anymore. We were in 2015, though, we had a opportunity in Multnomah County because there was a charter review committee. The charter of Multnomah County is like the Constitution. And so that's how they've managed themselves, is based off of that. And myself and a couple other good governance folks, Liz Trojan, John Vandermosten was on it, Mark Dubois was on that committee. We were able to get a change to the Multnomah County charter that included campaign finance reform, the tripod, restrictions, limits on how much a person could receive the maximum contribution that a person could receive who's running for office, transparency, more disclosure on who is involved in the donation, in the funding of these groups, and that disclosure has to be on their advertisements. So the idea here is that you put these restrictions on it and you put these limitations on it, and it forces the candidates out there to be able to go out and focus on the real issues and talking to voters instead of having to be so dependent on these special and just large amounts of money. So anyhow, we got it on the ballot and in 2015, and it passed by 87%. Multnomah County unequivocally voters wanted this. Next up was the city of Portland. We took that same ballot, the concept of the ballot measure, and we put it on the ballot in Portland. And it passed there 2 years later with 87%. So it's obviously, this is an issue that resonates with voters, and just the fact that it passed with such large percentages. And so, and the city of Portland is now coming up with a new, has a council race and the mayor's race, and it's all under these new restrictions and under these new reforms, I should say, from what we did there. So now the challenge was statewide, was that there had been an interpretation of the Oregon Constitution that you could not limit the size of a contribution to a campaign. And this was a ruling that the Supreme Court had done about 15, 20 years ago. Oh, well, in relation to Dan Meek's case in 1996. And so that was you couldn't get statewide campaign finance reform enacted because of that interpretation of the law from the Supreme Court, that the Constitution said that you couldn't restrict them.
Now, can I interject here just a little?
Sure.
Was the decision by the Oregon Supreme Court based on speech, stating essentially that money is speech?
Honestly, that's a great question. I don't know, but what I do know is that we took a ballot measure to Oregon voters. We collected signatures and we got a ballot measure on there that changed the Constitution and allowing for those limits, limits to be permissible. And so, and the speech issue, that's another issue. That's Citizen United. That's another bigger issue, and it's separate, kind of somewhat separate from what we're doing here. But so anywho, so now that we can make those changes and we can apply campaign finance reform statewide, that we're at this point at this moment in time with IP9. And IP9 is our group's Honest Elections unifocus right now, in the fact that this is a ballot measure that we're collecting signatures for to get onto the November 2024 ballot that would implement campaign finance reform statewide. And what that is, what we're talking about here is we're talking about, contribution limits, disclosure, paid for, ad is paid for by requirements, and it, with some other restrictions that allow for, like for instance, requiring more campaign finance reform information in online voter pamphlets and printed voter pamphlets, increases penalties for violations, it removes exception for campaign contributions to state law, defining bribery of public officials. I mean, you've got the biggest issue here is, though, for us, is the contribution limits. and the disclosure. You've got to
Yes.
know who is contributing before to a dark money group or a PAC, and the disclosure and the transparency from that makes for a better educated voter, a smarter voter.
Yes.
And then in that in turn will mean that those that come in with big money coming in can't trick us.
Importantly, I-9 also establishes no corporate contributions,
Mhm.
which is huge
It's a pretty
because
big deal.
corporations, well, we'll leave that alone, but corporations should not have a voice in the people's governance.
Well, and it's interesting, and that's when we're starting to get into that Citizens United issue. But what we're doing here, though, and it's applied perfectly in the city of Portland race, is by leveling the playing field by making the limits that we have and having limits that are fair across the board. It lessens the impact of the a business being able to make undue influence in an election. Right now in the city of Portland, it doesn't matter if you're an individual or a PAC or a small donor or a business. You can only give $350 maximum
Yeah.
to a candidate. So there's no reason for a candidate to have to go out and kiss the ring, as I call it, go out and to those business interests, developers or whatever, because they're with the expectation of being able to receive $50,000, big, huge checks from their PACs or from them. You have to treat them just like they are another voter.
Yes.
So that's the benefit of that, and this race ought to be very interesting because there's a lot of great candidates out there that are and are another unique aspect. It's not unique, but another part of the city of Portland's restrictions right now is or reforms was public funding. And so what happens, and that's an essential one, quite honestly, in a healthy campaign finance reform attempt. The public funding in the city of Portland is that any voter can contribute anywhere from $5 to $20 to a candidate, and that is matched by the city of Portland by 9-to-1 match. So basically a $20 donation is $180 for that campaign. And you can get these matching if you get a certain required amount of Portland people who are registered in Portland to give you that donation. So I think the first level starts at 250. So if you had 250 Portland residents that have given you a $20 donation, that qualifies you for that match of 9-to-1.
And that's incredible. That's incredible. And $20, really? And so that's why this is so attractive to me, is $20 is attainable.
Sure.
Right? People go buy coffee every day. $20 is attainable. And for 250 people, what's the population in Portland of adults? Right?
Well, exactly. And what's kind of neat too is that what's really neat too is that this really forces the candidates to focus on whom? The voter, the registered voter in the city of Portland. So they have to go talk to the people that they will be serving. And, that's to me is because now that candidate really starts to understand what is the issues on the grassroots level. What is the issues that are in the field, and they're not so focused on the large, the interests of the moneyed interests. They're focused.
So how does this impact people like Phil Knight? I mean, if he is unable to give millions to Christine Drazen, or say he can't give millions to your competition. By the way, Moses is running for District 4 in Portland's new city council expansion. So if somebody like Phil Knight wanted to donate to one of your competitors, he couldn't donate millions of dollars to make that person's campaign easier. What impact would that have on these high rollers?
Oh, they would be treated just like any other voter. And it seems to me that's what they call a fair election.
Democracy.
A fair, and and it goes also even deeper. I mean, what we're talking about here is, it seems to me, is restoring the faith of the voter into the system, into their candidates. I mean, you're seeing it right now in the city of Portland. It's the reason why they have elected to change the form of city government so dramatically over the last year, is because people were not feeling heard, were feeling disrespected by the city of Portland.
Right.
And it's all about good governance.
Yes.
So I'm fully behind this change. I think it just makes so much sense to to balance, to level the playing field, as I always say. It's a matter of leveling the playing field. And the quality of the candidates, these are all newbies. So many of these people in the Portland City race are newbies to
Love it.
campaigning, to politics. And that's great, because
Yes.
maybe, just maybe, they might be able to bring a more realistic and more honest and a more sincere view to governance.
And that's my favorite part, is the ability not only for the average consumer, average Portlander to say, hey, Moses, I support you. Here's $20. Let's go do this.
Yeah.
But there's a vast number of potentially qualified, no name people. People
Right.
we've never heard of, seen. We don't know what their ideas are. We don't know what their backgrounds are. This is a prime opportunity to get to know and learn about these people. And it's fabulous. They are the citizens involving themselves in their civic duty.
I mean, people say that you're crazy to run for office, and they may be right, but I'll say this. What it does do is it brings out the best in people, I'd like to think. It brings out the best in that candidate. And if you're in the race for the right reasons. And I think so many people, city of Portland has been kind of stifled as far as political candidate growth, leadership growth, because of the pandemic and because of the form of system of government that we have right now. It was always the same olds, if you will.
Right. Right.
So
The same
there
people
was,
rolling through.
And it was hard to break through. And so here all of a sudden we've opened the floodgates, and you have that next generation, or that of leaders itching to climb the ladder, or itching to serve, I should say.
Yeah, serve is a more appropriate
Right,
term.
exactly. I mean, there's some people run for office, in my view, for two reasons. One of two reasons: ego or values. And you can think of many campaigns out there that are ego based. You know what I mean?
Right, for sure.
And value based, though, is a little different. Is the better reason to be running, in my view.
It is, by far.
Because you share the values of the people that you want to serve.
Moses, where can we find more information about IP9 and all of the intricacies that is that piece of that petition?
Well, it's conveniently on a website. And actually, I really recommend the Honest Election website, honest-elections.com, because
Fabulous.
not only is there good information about IP9, there's information about some of the other measures that we were talking about, the historical work that we have done to get to this point. So if people want to do some homework on the challenges of campaign finance reform and establishing campaign finance reform in Oregon, there's some really in-depth good information over there that's on the website. But most importantly, for the moment, if you go to the website, you'll be able to click on a link on the IP9 page that you'll be able to download a a signature sheet, because IP9 is an initiative petition, meaning we are getting signatures. We have to get a certain amount of signatures from every single county in the state of Oregon. And so that means that no matter where you are, if you live in Oregon and you're a registered voter, which you would be automatically, by the way, thank you, Oregon.
Yes. Yes.
That you would be able to sign it and send it back to us. You can even email it to us as long as it's scanned and it's a. Well,
Oh, that's
maybe
interesting.
you know, better be careful. The instructions are on the website. There is
Yes.
when it comes to collecting signatures, there are some little idiosyncrasies.
Yes.
Certainly, I mean, paper, color, everything like that is
Yeah.
weird. So yes, please just read the website. Go to
And
the
the state doesn't make it easy at all. The Secretary of State makes it really rather challenging to push these petitions through.
For a reason. I mean, you don't want to. I don't mind personally. I don't mind a high bar when it comes to these kinds of signature gathering opportunities, you know, or petitions to be voted upon as ballot measures, you know, because you have to show the support. You know,
Yes.
you've got for it to be viable. And I can't think of too many ways. Now, I'm sure the pandemic didn't help as far as, you know, people gathering and being able to sign signatures and such like that. But I've been noticing more and more out there. And it's kind of getting back to normal. You see them at the Max stations, or you see them at the baseball game or whatever, you know. So,
and Moses brings up a huge point. We are looking for more signature gatherers and other volunteers, social media. If you're a Mastodon person, please contact us. Data entry, all sorts of different positions. So I will leave links to those opportunities in the comment section of this video. Moses, thank you so much for taking your time to help me with this today. I appreciate you as always.
Oh, my pleasure. You know, this is I love talking about campaign finance reform. It's one of those issues. It's one of those value issues to me that, you know, I'd like to see happen here in Oregon, and we're so close. And with the help of the viewer, if you haven't, please do go to the website honest-elections.com and go to the IP9, click on IP9, sign it.
Thank you, Moses. Have a great day now.
Thanks a lot. Take care.